Fear has more than one name. Fear. We say that word like it explains everything. I'm scared. I'm afraid. I'm nervous. But fear rarely is that simple because sometimes fear does look like panic. Sometimes fear looks like silence. Sometimes fear looks like control. Sometimes it looks like checking your phone 16 times because somebody hasn't responded. Sometimes it looks like overthinking a conversation that hasn't even happened yet. And sometimes fear walks into the room wearing a suit, carrying a clipboard, looking completely competent. Nobody even knows it is afraid. Maybe not even you. And that is what I want to talk about today. Because when we use something like a feelings wheel, fear is not a destination, fear is the front door. And when we start moving outward from that center, we begin to realize that what we call fear might actually be anxiety, insecurity, feeling threatened, feeling helpless, feeling overwhelmed, feeling inadequate, or feeling exposed. And those distinctions matter because you can't really respond to what you're feeling until you understand what the hell you're actually feeling. Now, if you've ever seen a feelings wheel before, the idea is pretty simple, right? You start in the middle with a broad emotion, let's say like fear, anger, sadness, joy, uh, and you get it. And then you move outward. The words get more specific the further out the wheel you go. And that's important because most of us learned a pretty limited emotional vocabulary. Fine, mad, sad, scared, good, bad. And that was about it, right? And then somehow we were expected to become adults and communicate complicated emotional experiences with five damn words. A feelings wheel gives us more language, and language matters because there's a big difference between I'm scared and I feel insecure. There's a difference between I'm afraid and I feel exposed. Now, those emotions live in the same neighborhood, but they're not in the same house. So today I want to stay inside the fear section of that wheel. Not every word, no. We'd be here till next Tuesday if we try to do that. No, I want to look at a few of the bigger branches, starting with fear. So let's start with the obvious one that comes from fear, scared. Now, this is the part of fear most people will recognize if you're being honest. Something feels dangerous, something might happen, something already happened, and you're afraid it could happen again. Scared is, the body saying, hey, pay attention. And that response absolutely has value. Why? Because fear is protective. You hear something downstairs at 2 a.m. and your nervous system doesn't say, Marcus, let's calmly complete a cognitive assessment of this, does it? No, hell no. You're up, you're running, you're looking, your body goes, what was that? The heart rate starts pumping. If you're in a couple, somebody's nudging the other one, attention narrows, your focuses, your system prepares. Now that's useful information. But the problem starts when the alarm system can't tell the difference between the danger that is happening now and what it remembers. And that is where scared can start moving outward into frightened, into helpless. Why? Frightened says something bad might happen. Helpless, on the other hand, what's helpless say? I don't believe I can do anything in this situation. Now, those are two different experiences, right? Think about it. Fear becomes a whole different animal when you believe you have no power. What am I talking about? Think about it. You can tolerate a difficult situation differently when you believe I have choices. I can leave, I can speak, I can ask for help, I can survive the outcome. But when that internal experience becomes, I'm trapped, that fear intensifies. And sometimes that helplessness can be old. You're having an adult reaction with a nervous system that remembers what it was like when you had very few choices. Now, that doesn't mean every present fear is trauma. No, don't get me wrong. I want to be careful about turning every human emotion into some sort of diagnosis. That's not what I'm talking about. Sometimes you are just scared, but sometimes the intensity makes more sense when you ask yourself, do I feel afraid of what is happening or helpless because of what it reminds me of? And that question can change the whole conversation. Now, let's move to anxiety. Now, fear usually has an object, right? There is something, the conversation, the diagnosis, the bill, the relationship, the decision. Anxiety, though, can be harder because sometimes the danger is a whole lot less clear. You just feel it, something's off, something might go wrong, something could happen. And then the brain, what does it do? It starts filling in all the blanks with the possibilities. That's where fear moves outward into worried and overwhelmed. Worry is what? A mental rehearsal. What if this happens? Then what if that happens? And then if this happens, what am I going to do next? And then suddenly your brain has produced all 17 seasons of that show that hasn't even premiered yet. And we call that preparation sometimes. And no, there is healthy preparation. I'm not trying to get away from that or call anybody out, but there's also rumination disguised as responsibility. And you're not solving anything anymore. All you're doing is rehearsing danger over and over and over. And then there's overwhelmed. Overwhelmed sounds similar to anxious, but it often feels different. Why? Because anxiety says something bad could happen. Overwhelmed says there's too much happening and I don't know if I have the capacity to handle all of this. Now, that distinction matters clinically and personally because response to worry might be grounding yourself in what you already know, but overwhelm may require something more concrete, like, can this wait? Can this be delegated? What needs to come off the damn list? What is actually mine to carry? Sometimes regulation is not deep breathing. Sometimes regulation is canceling three things. Now, we get into one I think a lot of people experience without even recognizing it as fear. I'm talking about insecurity. Because insecurity doesn't always feel scared. Sometimes insecurity feels competitive. Sometimes insecurity feels jealous. Sometimes insecurity feels defensive. Sometimes security needs constant reassurance. Sometimes insecurity, you walk into the room and immediately start comparing yourself to everybody else. Like, who's the smart one? Who looks better? Who makes more money? Who has more followers? I wonder who's got a degree? Who's in a relationship? Who belongs here more than me? And underneath all that comparison is fear. Am I enough? Do I belong? Am I going to get rejected? If they really see me, are they still going to choose me? Now, move one ring further out, insecurity might become inadequacy. And that's even more specific. Why? Because insecure says, I am uncertain about myself. Inadequate says, I believe I'm not good enough. I don't measure up. I can't do this. And when somebody lives there long enough, they can spend years trying to earn their way out of that feeling. How? More accomplishments, more degrees, more money, more attention, more relationships, more likes, more followers, more proof. And achievement is not always bad. Ambition is not pathological, but there's a difference between building something because you want to build it and building something because some part of you believes that if I can just accomplish enough, maybe then I'll finally be enough. Why? That finish line keeps moving every damn time because the problem was never the resume, it was the belief underneath it. Now, this one is important because threat does not always look afraid either. Sometimes threatened looks angry. Sometimes somebody questions you, they challenge you, they disagree with you, and suddenly your emotional reaction is way bigger than the actual conversation. Why? Maybe because disagreement did not register as disagreement, it registered as a threat. And it's a threat to your competence, a threat to your relationship, a threat to your identity, a threat to belonging, a threat to control. And this is where different core emotions can tend to overlap. Why? Because fear can become anger when our system decides I need to protect myself. And that's why emotional awareness really matters. If I think I'm only angry, I'm going to fight, I may attack, right? But if I can realize, wait a second, I actually feel threatened here. Now, if I feel threatened and I understand it, I have more choices. Now, what exactly am I threatened about? Is it my safety? Is it my ego? Is it my relationship? Is it my job? Is it my reputation? Somebody questioning my authority? And see, those are all different emotions and problems, right? And if I move further outward from threatened, one word I really like here is exposed. Because the exposed is fear without any sort of armor. Somebody saw something. They saw a mistake. They saw a weakness. They saw a need. They saw a part of my history. An emotion you normally keep contained, they finally saw it, it came out, and suddenly you feel naked, even though you're completely dressed. You just feel exposed. For people who've learned survival through competence, exposure can be terrifying because competence became protection. And if I know what I'm doing, nobody's going to question me. And if I stay strong, nobody worries about me. And if I keep producing, nobody can see how tired I am. And if I take care of everybody else, nobody can see what's happening inside of me. Then something cracks the armor. There you are, visible, vulnerable, exposed. And that can feel like fear. Now, here is the important part because feelings influence behavior, but feelings and behaviors are not necessarily the same things. Fear can push us towards all kinds of strategies: avoidance, control, people pleasing, isolation, maybe even aggression or perfectionism, overworking, constantly checking, asking for reassurance, shutting down, substance use. The behavior is often an attempt to regulate the feeling. That doesn't automatically make the behavior healthy, though, does it? But it does help us understand why it exists and think. This is where compassion and accountability do have to sit at the same table. What am I talking about? You can understand why you learned a behavior without pretending that it's still working. Maybe control helped you feel safe, but now control is choking your relationships. Maybe isolation protected you from rejection, but now nobody can reach you. Maybe perfectionism protected you from being criticized. But now nothing that you do ever feels good enough. And maybe alcohol quieted fear for a few hours, but that doesn't mean that alcohol was or is the solution. It means the behavior was trying to solve something. And if you take away the behavior without understanding the feeling underneath it, sometimes your system just goes shopping for a new behavior. That is why just stop doing it rarely works. We need curiosity. What is this doing for me? What feeling am I trying not to feel? And we have to make one more distinction. Feeling afraid does not automatically mean you are unsafe. Sometimes you are unsafe, please. And if you are, you are. And then fear is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Listen to it. Get the help. Get out of there. Leave the situation. Protect yourself. But sometimes fear is responding to uncertainty and memory and vulnerability or possibility. And if every sensation of fear becomes proof of danger, your world gets smaller and smaller. I cannot have that conversation. Why? Because I'm scared. I cannot date anybody because I could get hurt again. I can't change jobs because what if I fail at the new one? I can't trust because someone might leave. I can't speak up because somebody may disagree. Eventually, fear becomes the architect of our life, and safety becomes avoidance. And that's not the same things, because sometimes courage is not feeling less fear. Sometimes courage is having enough information about your fear that you can decide whether it deserves to have the freaking steering wheel. So, the next time that you say, I'm scared, don't stop there. Move outward. Ask yourself, am I frightened? Am I helpless? Am I anxious? Am I worried in this situation? Am I overwhelmed here? Am I feeling insecure? Do I feel inadequate? Do I feel threatened? Do I feel exposed? Because fear tells you something, but specificity tells you way more. If I feel overwhelmed, maybe I need less on my plate. If I feel helpless, maybe I need to identify where I still have agency. And if I feel worried, maybe I need to separate facts from predictions. And if I feel inadequate, maybe I need to examine the standard by which I'm measuring myself. If I feel exposed, maybe I need safety and connection, not another layer of armor. Same family, different needs. That is why naming our emotions matters. Not because we need 75 fancy words for our feelings. No, because sometimes the right words point towards the right response. And maybe that is the deeper invitation here. Some of us have spent a lifetime trying not to be afraid. Maybe that was never the goal. Maybe the goal is learning how to sit beside fear long enough to understand what it came to tell us, not obey everything it says, not shame it though, not hand it the keys, just listen. Because fear might be saying, I do not want to lose this. I do not want to be rejected again. I feel out of control. I do not know if I can handle what's coming. I'm tired of being hurt. I need to know I'm safe. And once fear gets specific, something changes. It stops being this giant shadow standing over your whole life. Now it has a name. And when something has a name, you can begin deciding what to do with it. Again, fear is information. It's not always instruction. You can hear it without surrendering to it. You can respect it without organizing your whole life around avoiding it. And sometimes courage starts with nothing more dramatic than this. I know what I'm feeling. I know why it's here, and I'm still going to choose what happens next. Presence before progress. I'm Markus.